Hey, I'm Chris Cuomo. Thank you for the company. And I'm pissed off. And I'll tell you why. The comeback kid, they're calling him now. The same media that wanted him out yesterday, that have been doing everything they can to manipulate this situation with breathless coverage, exaggerating how many Democrats were coming out. You have more media responsible for saying Biden should go than members of the Democratic Congress. They don't even have 10% of their caucus out against him in public. Almost all the media were all over him at the presser yesterday. Now they're calling him the comeback kid. You know why? Because they can. Because there is no accountability in the media these days. And there's no accountability in our politics these days. Let me give you another, for instance, of this, all right? Look, Joe Biden is fired up because people want him out. And anybody with self-respect and a guy who's been a fighter, which certainly Joe Biden has, is now pissed off, feels disrespected, and is going to bring what he has. This is Joe Biden. So was the guy at the debate. Okay? We're not getting a new one. Not everything changed. That's a BS narrative. Just like the idea that the Democratic chiefs have already decided he's out. The campaign's going to be suspended. It's just about when. Obama is at the top of the party. We'll discuss that later on and debunk it. I'm telling you now, former President Barack Obama is not Biden's main advisor, is not giving him guidance about what to do in any real way that Biden gives a damn about. Remember, Obama backed Clinton, not Biden. Remember that. And remember when I had a certain somebody on the show who was saying the second most powerful member of the DNC, other than Barack Obama, is Ron Klain, the guy who used to be a big staffer for Biden, that he too had decided he had to be out. Remember that? Look at the tweet that Ron Klain put out. Put it up, please. With yesterday's press conference and this new poll, it's time to end the freakout and unite behind the Democratic nominee and the only person who has ever beaten Trump. Guess what he didn't write? Kamala Harris. I thought he'd said he was already out. I thought it was decided. This is BS opportunism. And look, I'm not judging it as bad. This is politics. The right was smart to seed this story. Biden and the Democrats and the slide in the polls created the opportunity for them. And the media has been only too happy to fan the flames. But see the game. See it. The only one playing this straight, this is so bizarre for me to say, is Trump. Trump has been quiet for two reasons. One, he doesn't want to mess it up with his mouth. He got a pass at the debate. He got a pass for saying Zuckerberg would be in jail if he gets reelected. And he's afraid that they're going to replace Biden and that anybody else will beat him. The people around him are worried this worked too well. That's why Trump put out that weird social media statement kind of defending Biden. This is crazy. This is how crazy our politics has become. You keep asking me, how did we get here? Because of a poisoned two-party system that's all about a battle to the bottom and a media that is only too happy to play the game and fan the flames. We'll look back and say tonight was the night that this was the time that Joe Biden turned it around. No. Joe Biden's being Joe Biden. This is who he is, warts and all. He always has been. He's on a steady state of decline. We don't know if and when it will be too much. We don't know, but it's a question mark. But we know exactly who Donald Trump is. And he is absolutely as big of a concern as a leader, if you're looking at it fairly. But they've just decided to give him a pass because they have enough of chewing on his ass, and they decided to go after Biden. That's the game. It's not in good faith. I mean, look at the questions they asked him yesterday. Don't you have to go? 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 Why? Because that's what they want. Oh, but it's a legitimate question. Yeah, especially when that's what you want. Otherwise, you would have heard the other three people ask it, not ask the same question. Otherwise, you would have watched the presser, seen that, well, I don't see any obvious sign that he can't do it. In fact, he did a couple of things here better than Trump can. And now you know that we're onto something. How? Suddenly the New York Times, which was getting beaten up for doing what? Showing their hand too much, smacking Biden twice. You know they can't be fair about him. So what do they do today? They have people come out and say, oh yeah, and Trump should step down too. Too late. But they're not wrong. You have the two worst choices for president in modern American history. I'm not saying Joe Biden's a bad guy, okay? I'm saying he's not at his best, and America deserves people at their best. And Trump is a demonstrably bad guy. How bad he's going to be, we don't know. But him saying he wants to throw Zuckerberg in jail is not a good indication. We're going to get into it deeper. But I wanted to show you that Ron Klain quote, because just somebody says something and gets fired up and shakes their finger in your face when they get questioned doesn't mean they're right. You explain to me how Ron Klain went from being the second most powerful guy who wanted him out to putting out that tweet. Come on. Now, we're going to get to that, but we have breaking news that we can kind of all say like, oh, okay, all right, this seems right. Alec Baldwin's trial got thrown out on day 3. Why? The involuntary manslaughter case. You know this, right? Alec Baldwin was shooting this movie Rust, and he fires the gun or doesn't fire the gun, but it goes off, and his cinematographer, Helena Hutchins, dies, gets hit with a real bullet. There was a real bullet in the gun. On Thursday, the defense files a motion saying, hey, you know that they have ammunition that was handed over that they never gave to us? Friday, they argue it out in a hearing. The judge decides that the defense is right and grants the motion to dismiss, saying that she can't cure it and the prejudice is too much. Prosecutors hid evidence from them about ammunition that could have been very helpful to the defense's case. And the judge dismissed with prejudice, meaning Baldwin cannot be charged again for this crime. Here's a look at some of the drama in court today.
We're talking about a prosecution that didn't preserve those bullets, that didn't collect them at all, that didn't turn them over. This is critical evidence in the case that was never disclosed to us. This case should be dismissed, Your Honor.
I agreed with Detective Hancock. This has no evidentiary value. We're not going to continue to go down this rabbit hole.
When you say that there were discussions and the decision was made by all of you to put that ammo in a separate file, right? Is that correct? You said that?
Yes, ma'am.
Was Ms. Morrissey part of that discussion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me give the court an offer of proof, and if Mr. Spiro wants me to, I'll testify under oath.
You are going to testify?
Sure, absolutely, I'm happy to.
The state's discovery violation has injected a needless, incurable delay into the instant jury trial. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system and the efficient administration of justice. Your motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted.
So, you want to hear how crazy this got? One of the lead prosecutors, not the one who took the stand, Morrissey, the one who gave the opening statement, quit today. Why? Guess what? This almost never happens. This prosecutor wants to be heard enough that she's coming on TV right after this happened. Erlinda Ocampo Johnson joins us now. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity.
Hi, Chris.
First, let me give you a chance to respond what was said about you. Another member of the team said you left the team because you didn't like that this Brady hearing was public.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I left because I learned about this evidence when the public learned about it yesterday, late afternoon. I don't know if you're aware, I actually came on this case kind of late in the game. I came on the case towards the end of April, so I had to get up to speed. I was not involved in the Hannah Gutierrez case at all. And so I was not aware that this individual had taken this ammunition to the sheriff's department and provided it to the officers. I learned all of that yesterday when Mr. Spiro was cross-examining the crime scene technician. So I inquired some more. And this morning, when the motion hearing began, my position was during the lunch hour, before the lunch hour, during the lunch hour, we have an obligation as prosecutors. We have an obligation not only to the people, but to the defendant. Mm-hmm. And our obligation is to make sure that all the evidence is turned over. We don't get to decide what the defense is going to be. Our job is to ensure transparency and to ensure that the defendant has everything that the prosecution has gathered. What they do with it, that's up to them. Go ahead.
Two things. One,
sure.
The better minds that I bring on the show, because what do I know, were very impressed by your opening. They felt that you had good command and that you made a very strong case. Did you believe that Alec Baldwin should be found guilty?
I did. I believed the evidence that we had. I had no idea that there was this other evidence that had not been turned over. That there were some actions that were done during the filming, and there was some recklessness. I did based on the evidence that was available. But my job is not to get a conviction. It's to put the evidence before a jury. That's how I saw my job, is to put all this evidence before the jury and let the jury decide. But once things start, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I want to hear you. But once things what?
So once I learned that this evidence was not turned over, that it was there, it was under a different case number, and my obligations, my ethical obligations as a prosecutor. Now, keep in mind, I've been a prosecutor. I was a state and federal prosecutor for over a decade. I've been a prosecutor. I've been a criminal defense lawyer for the last 16 years. So I've been on both sides, and I know what you're required to do. And when this came to light, I think that the best decision would have been for the state to dismiss the case. That's why I resigned.
Really?
Because I believed that case should have been dismissed, and I advocated for that over the lunch hour, and it wasn't. And so when we came back after the lunch hour, I asked to withdraw.
So you wanted the prosecution team to walk away from the case. They said no, so you said, then I'm walking away, and then the judge basically agreed with you. So I have two questions. First one is, so you believed it should be dismissed. Explain to people who don't understand anything about the law, why did you believe this ammunition was so important for the defense?
So obviously, you're a lawyer, I think. Brady versus Maryland imposes requirements on the prosecution to turn over evidence. The rules of criminal procedure impose those requirements, those duties as well. So is the evidence material? That's number one. How timely is the disclosure? Without question, this was grossly untimely. Number two, is it material? So the question is, could the defense have made some use of this evidence in their defense? And like I said, we as prosecutors do not get to make that decision, what the defense is going to be. It's, can the defense use this, and could it potentially raise some sort of reasonable doubt? And you have to step back. You're not an advocate. As a prosecutor, you're not an advocate. You are there to present the facts and to present the evidence, and your job is, and that's why I took this case on. I agreed to come on board, is because there was a woman who was killed, no question about it. This was tragic, and something happened, and a jury needed to make that decision. And so I believe in the system, and unfortunately, something went horribly wrong here, and I was not aware of it. And when I did become aware of it, my ethical obligations dictated that I advocate for a dismissal.
So let's talk about what went wrong, okay? And, you guys at home can Google Brady versus Maryland. It's a 1963 case that basically just goes to things that either could be exculpatory, meaning it's evidence that the defense could use to show it wasn't them, or what they call impeachment, which is evidence that the defense could use to show that one of the witnesses for the prosecution is full of it, okay? Basically, that's what Brady was. They call it Brady material. Your co-counsel says you have it wrong, that this ammunition, she knew about it, obviously, and she says, nah, it didn't have any real value. It had no resemblance to the ammunition that is involved in Alec Baldwin's case. Why would I turn it over?
Well, at the end of the day, a jury could have believed that, but our obligations are to turn all evidence over that could potentially be used by the defense in their defense. It's not for us to decide what is the defense going to be. It's not for us to say, well, his defense was he didn't pull the trigger. So his defense is not.
I got you. But here's the tough question. The suggestion, not from you, from me, is that this may have been in bad faith. Your co-counsel knew about this. She was willing to get on the stand, take the oath, and say, I didn't see any value here. Defense counsel and you echo the same standard. You don't get to decide whether or not it has value. She says, yes, I do. Otherwise, how do I know what to turn over? And I thought this didn't meet the standard. What is the standard, and why do you believe co-counsel got it wrong?
Well, this is a lot to process. Obviously, I learned about this yesterday evening. But just in looking at, the first time I look at this evidence was this morning because it was brought over to court. I think as you saw, the judge had them open the envelope. And so there were 3 rounds that looked very similar to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. Thinking as a defense attorney, I'm thinking the defense could have argued Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was a great armorer. She was completely competent, and there was sabotage. So you have that potential sabotage angle. So then at that point, potentially those 3 rounds do become potentially exculpatory. But the point is, it should have been turned over. It wasn't turned over. And
you think it met the standard? Any way you look at it, it should have been turned over. It was enough for you to step away. I want to ask you about the case now that it's dismissed, because I didn't understand why you guys brought it. I thought it was totally political. I thought if this guy's name wasn't Alec Baldwin, if it was Alec McIntosh, he wouldn't be there. That he pissed off the prosecutors early on by what he was saying, and they wanted to get him. Why am I wrong?
Well, first of all, I was not involved in the charging decisions. I will tell you that based on my evaluation of the evidence that I was privy to and that I saw when I came on board on this case, was that there were numerous clips from the filming on the set that showed that Mr. Baldwin, unfortunately, did engage in some horseplay with this gun. For example, one individual who was interviewed by the OSHA investigators and testified or gave an interview that there was a time that he allowed Mr. Baldwin to use him kind of as a target, to shoot blanks at him, at his person. And obviously, these are real guns. You don't do that with real guns. So there's
on a movie set? But isn't that exactly what they do on a movie set?
Well, no, you don't use another person as a target, as a human target. So that could potentially be reckless. And so, he wasn't charged with intentional homicide. There's no question. For me, there's no question Mr. Baldwin did not intend to do this. But the question is, was there wanton and recklessness? And so that's why I did believe in the case. I had no idea that this other evidence had not been turned over.
Right. That is very clear, and I've told the audience, this is not about you. That's a separate prosecutor who seemed to know about it. We've showed her on screen. Her name is Morrissey. It is not you. I just want to ask you, I have 2 more questions. The first one is, I still don't buy it. I don't understand how on a movie set you should have a reasonable expectation that you might have live ammo in the weapon. Well, why? Why would you have that as a reasonable expectation?
Because remember, there are the SAG guidelines, there's bullets and safety bulletins that dictate even if you're an actor, even if you're on a movie set, you treat a real firearm as though it's always loaded, never point it at another person, and don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Those are cardinal firearm handling safety rules. So yes, did I believe that there was some inappropriate behavior with regard to handling this gun? I do. It's unfortunate that things went the way they went, but the fact of the matter is that we as prosecutors have very, very serious and high ethical obligations that when something comes to our attention, evidence comes to us, or we become aware of evidence, you turn it over. You don't decide.
Are you a big Alec Baldwin fan? Are you a big Alec Baldwin fan?
You know, I actually do. I am a fan. I wouldn't say a big fan. I did, and I never saw him as Alec Baldwin, the actor. To me, this is a case, someone died. This was a tragic case. Someone was killed. And she was killed with a live bullet. She was killed because someone also pointed a gun at her. I never had, for me, it was not about Alec Baldwin, the actor. This is not about politics for me. It was about putting forth the facts before a jury.
Last thing for you, and again, really, thank you for coming on, Ms. Johnson. Really appreciate it. You ooze authenticity to me, and we are very hungry for it right now when it comes to trusting our institutions. So I appreciate what you did, but I'm also worried for you now. Are you worried that, the right move was for you to just kind of sit there and let the judge make the ruling, and then if they made the wrong ruling, you could have walked away, but now you walked away and you may be a target in the community or by other prosecutors for going bad on your team?
Well, no, I walked away before the judge made the ruling. I asked you.
I know. Should you have waited?
No, absolutely not. I have ethical obligations. And personally, I have moral obligations. And my ethical obligation and my moral obligations really are not that different. And so when I see that something isn't right, and when I see that the law isn't followed, I don't care who you are, where you are, you make the right decision. And for me, the right decision was to walk up to the judge and ask to be allowed to withdraw before that circus of a hearing got underway.
Do you think that she decided the way she did because of you?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think that...
I got to tell you. Go ahead, make your point.
No, I said I think it's because it met the legal standard.
I got to tell you, Erlinda Ocampo Johnson, this is a very refreshing conversation. It has nothing to do with the outcome of the case. I still don't get the case, but I respect your argument on it. And I really respect what you did and your rationale for doing it. This was a brave thing to do. And I have tremendous respect for you. And if there's anything we can do down the road to help, if this gets a little ugly because people don't like what you did, we're a call away if we can help in any way. But thank you for rationalizing your behavior the way you did.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for being you. All right. Let's bring in the lawyers. I want the lawyers. I want Sarah, Azari, and Garagos, because I got to tell you, I don't know how you're feeling at home, but holy cow. I mean, have we ever had less confidence in our institutions, right? They're running these cases against Trump, promising it in campaigns. These ones are hiding the laptop. These guys are doing this. You can't trust anybody. Everything's deep state. And then this lady does this. Garagos. I mean, they're talking about how Biden came up with the right energy at the right moment. Forget Biden. This woman is just what America needed. What do you think of her move and her rationale?
Well, I will tell you, I was texting with your producers today before the judge made the decision. And I said, this case should be over. I mean, you're talking to a guy whose dogs, I've got 2 dogs named Brady and Giglio. And when I heard the prosecutor start to say, it's God's honest truth. When I heard the DA start to say, well, I didn't know, or we didn't know, it was them, and pointing at the team, it was like, have you read the Supreme Court cases? There's another case, a third case called Kiles v. Whitley, which says even the coroner is part of the law enforcement team. So you don't start blaming the team. Of course, this woman, I'm with you, so refreshing. I would like to say it's probably because she's been practicing criminal defense for 16 years that she's seen it. She's seen. Yeah, she's done both.
But she knew what the safe thing.
Yes.
She knew what the safe thing to do was. The safe thing was to shut up and let the judge make the decision.
It's always the case. My father, who was a prosecutor for many years, used to say, why do they want to stick their neck out when they can just let the judge do the dirty work for them? And she could have done that easily. And by the way, how outrageous was that other prosecutor and her hubris and her arrogance? Oh, my God. That woman should be summarily defrocked. I've never seen anything quite like it. And one other thing, by the way, for everybody who was throwing, for everybody who was throwing all kinds of darts at Alex Spiro yesterday, saying he wasn't up to it, he wasn't this, he wasn't that. It was his cross-examination that broke this open. So Alex has got a hot hand, and you should take back everybody who was throwing bricks at him yesterday.
Yeah, what a difference a day makes. Sarah, and just for everybody at home, I told you about Brady v. Maryland. It was a 1963 case. Giglio was a corollary case that went farther into impeachment, the kind of material you have to turn over if it could be favorable to the defense. And it was in 1972 or something, 73. Anyway, Sarah, I can't tell by your face. Are you as impressed by this lady as I am?
Oh, my God. I'm not only impressed, Chris, I can't wrap my head around how she was working with Morrissey, because Morrissey ultimately duped her as well. She didn't just not turn over the evidence as she should. She lied to the court about having complied with all of her discovery obligations, which, by the way, came out because she doubled down and insisted on testifying. And even her co-counsel didn't know that this evidence existed. And, I'm a little younger than Mark. This is one of the most egregious cases of Brady violation that I've seen in my career. And, when she testified, I also never knew the extent of the bias against Alec Baldwin. So when everyone was saying, oh, he's just being tried because he's Alec Baldwin, I was disagreeing with it. For the first time I heard, and hope NewsNation doesn't fire me, I'm quoting her. She had called Alec Baldwin, quote unquote, sea sucker and arrogant prick and all kinds of things to witnesses. I mean, it was terrible. And there was, just as the judge said, Chris, Sarah, there was no righting that wrong.
Last word, Mark.
But what's disturbing is, what about the armorer? I mean, remember, this is all because the armorer's dad's friend brought this stuff in because his daughter was sitting in custody. Where is she? Why isn't she out? She should be summarily released.
Well, right, exactly. And I think what happened with Morrissey is going to impact Hannah Gutierrez's appeal. I don't know. It's going to bring a new angle to that plea that David Halls took. This is a mess.
They need to go back to this judge and have her summarily released. She needs to be released. It's ridiculous.
I got to tell you, guys, I'm glad to have this moment with you. Sarah, Mark, thank you very much. It's a good one to process together. We needed this. I'm going to take a break, 4 minutes and 5 seconds. But I got to tell you, everybody's saying, boy, Biden really changed his fate. No, you know what? That did a lot more. Nothing to do with Alec Baldwin. I told you I didn't like the case. I got to tell you, that prosecutor made a better case than I had in my head about it. But the system works. There are good people who do it the right way. Stephen A. Smith is here. He was one of the first voices to call for President Biden to step aside long before the debate. How about now? Next. And himself. Thank you very much for being with us. This is not a new feeling for you. First, Do you still feel that way after the last couple of days? And why?
I feel even more adamant over the last couple of days than I did a year ago. Obviously, we saw what we saw during the debate. There's no doubt about that. By the way, there's an echo in my ear. I apologize if somebody could get rid of that. But anyway,
you sound great.
I saw what I saw a year ago. We know what we've seen since that time. We know how awful the debate performance was. He acknowledged that. First, we heard it was sleep deprivation. Then we heard it was jet lag. We heard actually it was a cold before the jet lag and all of this other stuff. In the end, here's what it comes down to. If you're a liberal, if you're a progressive, if you're somebody on the left, Joe Biden is to be respected and appreciated. 36 years of service in the Senate, 8 years as vice president, 4 additional years as the president of the United States of America. That's 48 years. I'm not looking at his age because I think Nancy Pelosi, if I remember correctly, is 84 years of age. No one would accuse her of declining cognitively or anything like that. It's not about his age. It's about him. And I say that respectfully. And I think we find ourselves in a situation where it should be okay for us to say, Mr. President, we appreciate your service to this country. It's time for somebody else. And 4 years ago, he said, hey, I'm a stopgap to pave the way for a younger generation. Well, guess what? Kamala Harris is younger. Gavin Newsom is younger. Wes Moore is younger. Hakeem Jeffries is younger. There's a host of people in politics, despite the 28 senators and I believe 73 U.S. representatives that exceed the age of 70, there's still 400 plus additional elected officials that are under the age of 70. He's 81 going on 82. There comes a point in time where it's okay to say, your time is up.
Well, there's no rule, but it's not age, it's stage. I hear you. 2 questions, one practical, one philosophical. The practical one, but the Democrats voted. They had a primary process, incomplete as it was, pathetic as it was, and 80-something million of them voted. And now you're going to negate their votes? And this is supposed to be the party that's worried about the demise of democracy? And you're just going to have him gone and just pick him by smoky room and give it to Kamala Harris? How is that democracy?
Well, in fairness to a lot of people out there, they've been proclaiming that it can't happen. It's too late for that. But it's not impossible. OK, what's impossible is to imagine looking at him and thinking that he's going to go 4 additional years without more of a precipitous drop off. And that's the priority here. And so I look at it and I say to myself, whether it's Kamala Harris or somebody else, it's really about him and what he's capable of giving us for 4 more years. Now, if you're saying just get through 4 more months and win the election, then admit it. But if you're saying 4 more years, there's nothing that we've seen from him that tells us that we should look forward to 4 more years.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Here's the philosophical problem. What is a better gamble? That Biden makes it 4 more years in some way, and if he can't, then there's enough fill-in with the team and with the VP, that it is still a better gamble than Donald Trump, who seems to be promising more every time he is in hiding, that he's going to go on a jihad when he becomes president of the United States?
Well, first of all, let me get this out the way. There's no way in hell I'm voting for Donald Trump, for precisely the reason you just pointed out. I think there would be civil war in this country. I don't think he's going to provide any peace whatsoever. I don't think he's going to engage in unifying this nation. I think he's going to serve to divide. You know, that's my issue for him. It has nothing to do. I don't even get to his policies. It's him being the divisive force that he is and being such a narcissist that he doesn't prioritize the well-being of this country. He prioritizes his well-being. And I don't think anybody in the presidency should be thinking like that. But the flip side to it on a far more innocuous level, when the president is 81 years of age, approaching 82, and there's clear slippage, which you came on my show and I've articulated, as well as being on your own show here articulating, and you're going to look to the American people and say, I'm the best guy for the job, knowing you slipped, knowing you've got Kamala, knowing you've got other people within the Democratic Party that are clearly capable of doing the job, to take that position. Isn't that about what you think instead of what the American people think? After all, there was no primary. The Democrats pushed him right through. So I have a right as an American citizen, as a voter, as somebody who voted for that man, who would vote for him again despite how I feel, to articulate my reservations and apprehensions about what I'm seeing from this man. It's just the right thing to do, and I'm doing it.
Stephen A. Smith is one of the best communicators we have, right? Sports, society, doesn't matter to me. I hear what he's saying all the time from people who aren't on the inside in the cognoscenti. They don't say, what do we do? They say, how did we get here and how can this be the best we can do? Just like him. Stephen, I know you're on vacation. You came in anyway because you said this matters enough to make time for it. Thank you for doing it, brother. I appreciate you. And once again, I owe you.
No problem, brother. You don't owe me anything. We're all good. Take it easy.
No. Listen, thank you for making your witness. We'll take a break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. I'm telling you, he's got a unique way of capturing what a lot of you feel, because I hear it. So thanks for that. Now, so let's bring in some of the big brains here, okay? Can you make a shift? Is that fair to the Democrats who voted in the primary, though I see it the way Stephen did? It was kind of a hack, fugazi primary. Let's talk to somebody who knows how it works inside Team Biden, and let's talk to somebody who knows how you look at the numbers. Two amazing experts, both of whom have taught me for years. Next.
The nominee, no one else, not the press, not the pundits, not the insiders, not donors. You, the voters, you decided. No one else, and I'm not going anywhere. I learned a long time ago that when you get knocked down, you get back up.
I'll tell you, that was good energy, and you're not going to see a crowd with that complexion and that diversity standing behind his opponent. President Biden has been fighting back. As I said the other night, you got yourself into this, you're going to have to get yourself out. Either get out of the trouble bubble or you're going to have to get out of the race. Now, it's not over because the polls are not good, but he's doing what he can. So, Chris Matthews, okay, very, very long-time political reporter, said that Biden is this is so interesting to me, and I think it's so huge for us, okay? Both sides now, the Trumpers and the left, are blaming the same thing, let's say, for their problems. The elites. Chris Matthews brought it up today and said Biden doesn't care about the elites. Take a listen.
Now, who's he going to listen to, Jill or George Clooney? I'm telling you, it's personal. He is absolutely right about the elite. Look at President Obama. He served for 8 years loyally, and yet Obama backed Hillary Clinton for president and didn't back him. He's going to hold that base of the Democratic Party, which he will need in November. And I'm telling you, people are going to end up rooting for him in October because he will have a comeback. And in this elite-fashioned attack on him, they're going to pay for it. But in the end, they're going to end up voting for him. It's going to be stunning. He is not quitting. He is not built to quit.
Now, I got two better minds here, but I do want to make one quick point. I see something very hopeful in Chris Matthews, who is part of the elite, who is part of the cognoscenti, who is part of the insider, complaining about it. As we see on the right, where elected leaders and pundits are always blaming the elite. And here's why. If you want change of this poison two-party system, it's going to have to come from the people who benefit from it, the elite, just like happened with civil rights. It's not going to happen because the minorities make it happen. You need the empowered. You need the elite to want the change. And I take hope from hearing Matthews and hearing the people on the right saying the same thing. Damn the elites. We should be about the people. That's a good sign. Now we have to take advantage of it and say, yeah, change your rules, change your stupid party politics to make them more open so we can get past left and right and get back to reasonable so we don't have crappy choices like Trump and Biden. Now, in terms of the dynamic of how this is going to unfold going forward, Chris Whipple, phenomenal guest. Interviewed President Biden for his book, The Fight of His Life, Inside Joe Biden's White House, understands the dynamic around Team Biden perfect, and I know to trust him because he raised me as a journalist at ABC News. We're also joined by political commentator and founder of the So What newsletter on Substack, which is so good. It is a deep read, but it goes so fast because he's so funny. Chris Cillizza. It's great to see you, brother. So,
sir.
Chris Whipple, give us some insight into, is Biden not making any calls? Is he not able to understand, or is he making all the calls? What's the dynamic around him right now?
First of all, great to see you, Chris. Look, I don't consider myself elite in any way, shape, or form, but I'm with Chris Matthews on this. I thought that tonight's rally in Michigan was a real game changer. And, 48 hours ago, I really thought that Nancy Pelosi had opened the door a crack to a possible intervention with Biden to tell him to step aside. Now, that would have been a really heavy lift. It would have required family, close friends, probably Jim Clyburn, Mike Donilon, and among others. But I think the NATO press conference started to close that door. And tonight, I think that rally in Michigan slammed it shut because that was a tour de force. It was the best I've ever seen on the stomach.
Yeah,
it was maybe not Mario Cuomo in San Francisco, but it was sure as hell, give him hell, Harry. It was, and of course, Harry Truman is a perfect role model for Biden right now. And I think that's going to be the strategy.
Two quick things. One, Biden always used to say that when he heard my father in '84, he said, that guy is actually better than me. And he said, and I've never felt that about anybody else, which tells you something about his head. But also, Chris, do you put any credence in the idea that Obama or Ron Klain are calling the shots about what happens with Biden?
No, not at all. I don't. Neither one of them, and certainly not Obama. Because, that's a really fraught relationship.
Yeah, we got three Chris's. We got three Chris's on the screen right now. Let me bring in Chris Cillizza. Chris, I agree with Whipple because, again, he's a mentor of mine. But I think that the polls tell the story. And if they stay soft or get softer in the places that matter, the people who are afraid of losing their seats will mean more than the moment he just had in Michigan. What's your take?
Yeah, I think I agree. I disagree with the other two Chris's, and I'll tell you why. I don't think anyone outside of the very far right thinks that Joe Biden can't do some things as a candidate and can't be good. I thought he was pretty good with the NATO summit. I did not watch the Michigan rally, but all reports, including the Free Press from Michigan, are that he was quite good and energetic. I think that's totally fine. The issue for me, I go back to Jim Himes, who's a congressman from my home state of Connecticut. Very reasonable guy, ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, serious dude, not a headline chaser. He put out a statement right after the NATO summit saying, look, the reality of the situation is that we will have to watch every single speech, every single interview, anything that Joe Biden appears in public. And if he ever looks less than what he looked like in Michigan tonight, it brings everything back. And to me, that's the problem. Like, I just don't know. Remember, in my mind, this is not about the debate. Yes, the debate was a disaster for Biden. But what it's really about is that for 18 months prior, polling showed time after time that a large majority of the American public thought Joe Biden was too old. So the debate affirmed and sort of cemented that, but I just don't think you can fix it. Now, I certainly can be wrong. I just don't think you can fix it by an event or 3 events or 10 events.
Right. Go ahead, Chris. Last word to you.
About the polls. I'm writing a book now about presidential campaign managers. They'll all tell you that polls at this stage of a race are not just a snapshot, but they're almost a kind of coulda, woulda, shoulda thing. If you could have a younger candidate, wouldn't you want one? Of course you would. That's not the same as walking into the polling booth in November and being presented with Trump or Biden. So the polls, the polls are just not realistic. And frankly, it's astonishing to me, amazing, that after that catastrophic performance in the debate, that the bottom didn't fall out on the polling. We're looking at dead heats in the swing states and sometimes margin of error. And I think that
Give me a quick take, both of you. First, you, Chris Whipple. Do you believe he sticks?
Yeah, I do. I do believe he sticks. Look, I called my book The Fight of His Life. I had no idea it would be so apt right now. I don't mean to minimize the struggle. Barring another catastrophic performance like the one in that debate, I think he sticks. And I think, this is not 1974. Barry Goldwater is not going to go and tap him on the shoulder. There is no Democratic Party that can really do that.
Chris,
I think he sticks. I think he sticks. I do. I think he and his inner circle, which is increasingly his family. It's always been his family, but I think he in times of crisis, you obviously lean on the people you know best. I think they believe that he can still win, that this is overblown, that he may be the only candidate who can win. Now, I disagree with that. So I think he sticks. Do I think that is a major problem for Democrats, not just at the White House level, but at the Senate level and the House level? I do. Yeah,
I agree. I think he sticks because they don't have a plan of how to get him out without pissing off their own, because they negate their own primary, and they don't have a mechanism if he doesn't want to get out. And even if they do, they're going to have to pick Kamala Harris, and a lot of them aren't happy about that either. But we'll see what happens.
And by the way, Chris, just to add, just very quickly, I know you're heavy on time. Very quickly, every day Joe Biden lasts as the nominee, he's got a heck of a lot better chance of staying as a nominee, right? I mean, it's every day that we go by where there's no other plan, there's no organized opposition to him to get him out, he's probably going to win.
Whip, I can't wait for your next book. You always have an invitation here to talk about whatever you want. I love you. I miss you. Saliza, the same. You got the best glasses of anybody but Deepak Chopra. It's great to see you. I'll see you both again. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. Final thought that I've been thinking about all day. Next.